life for one, living. I think the right now the state of the world is a big one to keep the idea and the momentum going. I mean, at the same time too, just the love to play music. I mean, I love playing music and I love writing songs. It can go as big as it can ever get, or it can be where it is now, and I'll never stop writing a song. So, or being in music in some way.
This is Rob Ruckus.
Hey, this is Kate Clover.
Hey guys, it's Nick Collins here from The Effect and Better Strangers.
Hi, my name is Madeline Rose.
Hey, it's Ben McKelvey.
It's Tim Howard here from Mike and the Mechanics.
Hello, I'm Amanda Lehman.
I'm Billy Harvey.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Casey Sampson from the band Twist Stop.
Hey, it's Tony from Fastball.
Hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah Mitchell.
Hey, guys, it's Matt here from the White Lakes.
You're listening to Almost Famous Magazine.
Come join us for this interview. Check it out, Almost Famous Magazine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Hang right here on Almost Famous Magazine's YouTube channel. Thank you to everyone who joins us week after week for these great hangs with amazing artists from tons of different genres all over the world. We appreciate it. We love the comments. We love the feedback. Also, every time that you ring that bell, share this with a friend. It means a lot to us. So keep it up. Thank you so much. I'm super excited right now because there's a place where you may not realize it if you've seen some recent episodes. There's a lot of great music coming out of Canada. And today I'm going to sit down with another great Canadian musician. It's no different. I'm going to be hanging with Henry Taylor. He's an award-winning Kitchener-Waterloo, Canada-based singer-songwriter with his first folk rock album dating back to 1998. He's got a whole bunch of albums. We're going to get deep into his musical history. His sixth studio album, Sweet Thunder, was released back in March of this year to rave reviews. And today we're going to deep dive into his career and musical background. So, Henry, welcome to The Hang.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Great to be here.
I'm excited. I'm excited to be this. I'll be honest with you. I've gotten off of like a couple of months of a lot of punk rock bowling, a lot of punk rock.
Yeah.
It's time to get into another genre. There's
Chill
more than punk rock
bit.
out there. Absolutely. We're going to mix it up a little bit. So
Nice.
You've had a long career, and one of the greatest ways that we can start to really get to know you is kind of going back to the beginning. So, I like to kind of learn, like, did you find music or did music find you? What was that spark and the story since then to get you to here today?
It's funny. When I was probably, grade 7, maybe even grade 6, I found a cassette tape in my room. And back then we had Sony Walkmans. And I was just lying in bed and I put it on. And one side of it was Rush 2112. And the other one was a bunch of mixed Neil Young songs. And I just sat there, and I love Rush, but that Neil Young just took me to a different planet. And so I came down in the morning. I said, Dad, who's this? And I played it for him. And then he walked to our record collection and pulled out Comes a Time. And I think After the Gold Rush by Neil Young. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, okay, I'm into this stuff. So that was kind of the start where I found something on the floor, probably my brother's tapes or a friend's tape, and it just set the whole path in motion, actually.
Wow. And to think you could have been like the first big prog folk.
That's right. Depends what you find, right?
It all comes down to that. And I love that they're both Canadian artists. When you live down in the States, unless it's, let's say, Rush or maybe Bryan Adams, there's just not enough. Right? There's just not enough discussion about the great Canadian artists that we're lucky enough to have in the music world. So I think that's fabulous. So that kind of was the spark. Where did you pick up a guitar? Did you decide you want to have lessons?
Yeah,
what happened?
Well, my dad's always had guitars lying around the house. I even remember when he was younger, when we were really little, he had a little music room when we lived in Woodstock, Ontario. So, I came down and he had an old Yamaha guitar from the 70s. And I actually ended up playing that thing probably for 15 years. And so I just, he put me in some music lessons. That didn't go too well, but I had the love to just sit at home and learn the instrument and, start singing at a younger age. And it was always in our house. So that was really cool. cool thing to grow up with, music everywhere.
Well, for anyone, anyone watching who's a guitar player, I mean, if you had one of those early mid 70s Yamaha guitars and you were able to make it, stay in tune and last that
the
long.
FG series.
Wow.
FG
okay,
Gackies. FG Gackies. They're like, I don't know. This one had some magic to it. It was quite a neat guitar.
You definitely got it to live past its expected lifespan for sure.
100%.
For sure.
I think they cost about $50 back in the day.
Yeah. They sold them at where? Woolworths, right?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. So you started out with Neil Young, having a passion there, but you had, that experience of hearing Rush. What were the influences besides Neil that started to kind of formulate the musician you wanted to become?
When I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo here, and it ended up being a lot of the 70s bands. When I was a little older, the music went a little electronica in the 80s, and my gang was just still listening to like Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Cream, the Grateful Dead, John Fogerty, all the classic rock bands, Bob Dylan. And after that, you go through, that's how I kind of got into music. And after I found the superstars, like, Tom Petty came out in the 80s, it just blew my mind. Tom Petty's one of my favorite ever. And, after I got through the kind of the 70s phase there, I was a huge fan of the Cult in the 80s. The Cult were just fantastic to me. Really loved the Cult. And, and I branched from there, I guess, coming into, I don't know, the band Wilco, the Jayhawks, Sunvolt, and it all that's where the Neil Young 70s path kind of led, at least our group anyway, into those bands, which are now like almost as equal as superheroes to me. Like, I think Gary Loris might be the best singer on the planet. And, Wilco, is just live is insane, and Jay Farrar and all those guys, Uncle Tupelo. And, and that took me, at that same time, there was Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and all the grunge rock. But beside the grunge rock, which I really, really liked as well, like I love Pearl Jam and them, but there was that, seed from the spark of the 70s and the folk rock that came through the Jayhawks and Wilco. For me, is still to this day my favorite musicians.
Well, I'd say after listening to some of your stuff online, I would say that you have definitely grabbed the torch from the Jayhawks and you're running with it. Because one of the first things I thought is, wow, I can hear some Jayhawks in here, and I'm a big Jayhawks fan.
He's been. I used to come home from rehearsals when we were in Toronto. We'd had this crazy rehearsal space in the basement, just at the bottom of Toronto on Lakeshore. And I come home from rehearsals and I put on the Sound of Lies album, just in my headphones every night. And pretty much would figure I'd pass out, but no, I'd make it to the end of the album, and then go to bed. And so, yeah, that band has just pretty much changed me, they're just fantastic.
Yeah, I've had a chance to see them. I've seen them in Austin. I've seen them in Dallas. And their shows are just, there's a magic about them.
There is. And it's something special for sure.
Yeah. No, so you definitely are passing the torch. So if someone was watching today and not familiar with your story, not familiar with your music, not including the current album, which we'll talk about in the middle, but if someone was going to go into your catalog and find a couple of songs to get to know you so that you get that hook in them, right?
Yeah.
What are two or three of your songs? They don't have to have been singles. They could be deep cuts that you really feel that if someone's going to start to get to know you, that's where they should go. They should check out a couple of those older songs to really get a feel for you.
I think, there's some really nice acoustic stuff on the old song. There's one called, which one am I talking about here? The, off my last album called Buttercup. I think Buttercup is a good representation of my softer side. It's acoustic guitar, banjo, harmonies, harmonica. Also on this, there's a Settled for Love album. I think Settled for Love's a very cool groove from the early days. Let me see. Geez, going way back, there's a song, called Baby Jones that was the first song I actually wrote with my wife and now songwriting partner back in the day. Is a good one to find kind of where I was coming from. And, we wrote one called Leave It Alone off our last album that is an anthem for the environment, and I find we're pretty conscious people over here. And, I think those would be some good ringers to start out with. There's, some rockers early on, like Heard It All Before. And, but yeah, I think it's a pretty good base for a start. I also feel if you listen to my, collection of albums, that you'll notice the qualities gets better each album. I think the songwriting gets better with each album. And, but yeah, it's interesting to go back and figure out how many songs go through all your songs in your head, but yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, you said that your wife is your writing partner, and that's a lot of material between 1998 and now. We were only slightly younger then. And
that's right.
But you write with her, but you have a band, right?
Yeah. So
like how, like, is she, cause I don't recall seeing her in the videos in the band. So like you've got a husband and wife writing partner, but you got this band. How does the band end up contributing, and what do they bring to the sound of the songs that the two of you create?
No, well, actually, the latest Hummingbird video, Monique plays keyboards in the band. So Monique grew up playing piano, and a little while ago, we had some members, just didn't work out. I find, some people would rather go to a baseball game than play a gig. That's a tricky one, but they're great guys, super friends still. And James, one of the guys that gave us a piano. So Monique ended up, who grew up, playing piano, conservatory piano as a young girl. Anyway, jumped back on the piano, and in no time was, what I, consider you have to be up to speed to play in the band, and, just killed it. And now she's a full member of the band. So it's very cool. And as for, even though she's in the band now, how the band contributes is, when I record, I kind of make people get a take, right? If I could, I would go live off the floor, just like Dave Grohl, and, it's always tape and live off the floor, but, that's not, you need a lot of money for that business. So what I do is I make everyone get a take, though. So start to finish, you get your take, and I think that brings a warm feel, and that also lets their own personality in their playing come out, So we write them, but we're not too strict on, make sure you're doing this here or there. It's a pretty open forum for the musicians to be themselves, which I think is really cool.
So you allow them to bring their own personality to your music.
Yeah. I mean, if it's not working, it's not working, but that usually doesn't happen. So,
So you got me curious. How long have you and your wife been together?
We've been together 20 years now.
And she just passed the audition to get in the band.
She just tried. First try, she made it. So actually a funny story with that is when we first got together, my brother asked me to write a song for their wedding, and it ended up called My Love. And then Monique's like, well, let me try and, write with you. And so we wrote a song together, and then I went away and I ended up like making the verse, the chorus, and then, and just kind of discarded everything we'd done together. And then essentially we didn't write another song for about 10 years. And then, I was going ahead, and I was technically out of ideas at this point, put out a record on my own, down in the basement writing, kind of sounded like all the same old malarkey coming out of my voice. And then, Monique joined in, and all of a sudden we started writing these great songs. Because her touch with words is she's quite amazing with the word, and she's a writer and she writes books and poems and all this stuff. So it was kind of neat that way. All of a sudden the songs took a new turn. So in a sense, a lot of these songs are coming from a female perspective, even though I'm singing them. So there's a song on our last album called It's All Right, and that's a neat one. And there's one, I woke up in the morning, I don't have a name, got up this morning, didn't have my makeup, didn't have my car, right? And, so it's kind of neat. It throws what I think is a really interesting twist to, technically a male lead singer, where, the thoughts aren't all coming from the testosterone, right? They're coming from a woman's point of view. And I think it's really added a huge dimension to the songwriting and the feel of the songs, really. Yeah.
Wow. I think that's great. I mean, being open and vulnerable to allow yourself to take on lyrics from a different point of view like that, I think is really a great thing, because there are some who write and it's just about them, and it's a very kind of self-centered type of thing. But when you can put yourself in another person's shoes and bring out that story and bring out that sentiment, I think it speaks volumes.
Well, there's a song on our new album entitled Burn, and that was, it's a pretty heavy song. It's when, the women lost their rights by the Supreme Court, and, it really affected Monique quite heavily. So there's I guess she's a great reader. And so she read Fahrenheit 451 back in the day. And there's a line in there that says, "Those who cannot build will burn." And that's kind of where the song started from, and that is, I wouldn't have written that as a male, as much as I, think it's a little intense, but, I wouldn't have come up with anything that emotional towards something like that for sure. So that was a big one. I think it's a big song,
Nice. You mentioned something a little earlier about you're kind of in a creative stalemate for a while. You've been doing this a long time. What are the things that spur your creativity now? What are things that keep that creative juice flowing for you?
Honestly, life for one, living. I think right now the state of the world is a big one to keep the idea and the momentum going. At the same time too, just the love to play music. I love playing music and I love writing songs. It can go as big as it can ever get, or it can be where it is now, and I'll never stop writing a song. Or being in music in some way. But we went through a big year, Monique and I, this year. And so to be on the other side of that is, huge. And it's given me an intense focus, that is really, makes me feel proud and happy and, willing to just, keep going and, going down to Nashville, or, we're planning to go to Europe this summer to tour and, just keep the drive alive, and I think the love for the music is probably the most. The love for my family, all that stuff just feels it every day when you get up. So,
nice.
Yeah.
So Sweet Thunder came out in March, and it's getting great reviews and a lot of accolades. Kind of what was the genesis of that album, and kind of what did you start with creativity? What did you start with creatively? Mm-hmm. And then where did it end up, right? Like, how did it evolve, and what are some of the high points of this album for you?
Well, interesting. Hummingbird is a very big song at our shows. That's probably one of the top. We end it every show with Hummingbird, and people love it. But it really started, I think the first one we wrote for this album was, I Don't Have a Name. It started from a very heavy point in Canada where, our First Nations women were going missing, and, and Monique woke up with this line, and it went in that way. And then we found that we were writing different songs. So some were heavy, some were, slower. On this album, we wrote a song for my best friend who's going through some tough times called "Hey Old Pal," and it started through conscious thought, love for our friends, love for the world, really. And the title came. We were we were walking down the street, and Monique looked over, and there was a blue Corvette, and the license plate said "Sweet Thunder." And we both looked at each other and went, "Well, there's the album name." Because we got a lot of it, big rock and roll on here, and then we've got some acoustic stuff. We got some banjo, so it's a good mix of what I like to say, sweetness and heavy. So "Sweet Thunder" was just a no-brainer when we saw that. And, a neat thing. So with this album, it took a bit of time to do because we record everything here. So we have a studio at home. We, I engineer it. Monique and I produce it. I mix and master it. So we go top to bottom in our studio, which I really like because then, if you're not feeling it, it's not a big deal. You can come back to it without worrying about being on someone else's clock, And I think that was also a big part of the way the songs were turning out, because I had a lot of songs. There's a song "Without You" that when I started recording it had a big Gretsch guitar with a Bixby, slow song, but just heavy. And I started listening back to a time I played it at a festival we played here in Canada, and it was just on acoustic guitar and a harmonica. And I thought, well, that's the song. So I switched that from this heavy, deep, low song to an acoustic, song with harmonica. And it just, it really, I think the time we had and on it changed a bit of the mood here and there, which is really nice to do. Yeah.
Nice.
Like it starts heavy, chills out in the middle, and ends heavy. So.
Great. I can't wait to get a copy of it and listen to it all. Over the years, you've evolved your sound, and going back to our beginning of our discussion, your first two influences are Rush and Neil Young. You've blended some rock and folk, a little country. Like, how do you make those creative decisions for how you want your distinct sound to be, as opposed to immediately recognizable as something else to someone who maybe isn't as big a Jayhawks fan as I am and can hear some of the influence?
I think the song tells you a little bit of where it wants to go. Like I said, Without You, I tried to go heavy. It wasn't letting me. Also, like here in Canada, there's Blue Rodeo is a very big band here in Canada, and they've got just beautiful pedal steel guitars, and so I just take honestly bits and pieces from everyone. But then when we write a song, no one's in our mind. It's just the way it works is you usually come up with a groove, and Monique will be like, "Oh, I like that." So we sit down and kind of write it. And I'm not thinking of any band in particular when we write our songs. But when recording them, I'll, oh, well, I liked what happened in that Wilco song at the end. And so I'll do, base ideas off it. But, as I said in another press thing, everybody's perfection is different, right? So no matter what you think, if you're, going somewhere as yourself, and you may, borrow from a Neil Young or the Jayhawks a little bit on a groove, it never sounds like the band unless you're trying to sound exactly like the band. You can use the same ideas, but I think we're a very individual sounding band. On the radio here in town, there's no one sounds like us. There's a lot of country bands, similar sound, a lot of rock bands, similar sound, but I find we have a very unique blend. And when we rock, it just sounds like us. And when we're acoustic, it sounds like us. So, yeah.
I like what you said about, that perfection thing. Because one of my favorite quotes is that perfection is the enemy of good. And I think
that's a good quote.
Sometimes the over perfection of music, especially in today's digital world where you're not wearing through tape, you can just keep laying it down and laying it down. But
Yeah.
what really is that perfection sometimes keeps artists from having a good song, right?
Sometimes even through this process, because I have, you got a lot of time if it's in your own studio. I found myself mixing my song right out, and then, oh my God, where am I? And I just have to start over again, because you can do nothing but endlessly tweak your EQs or your this or your that. So I find it's dangerous, the digital world, that way, 100%. And I come up sometimes and Mick's like, "What'd you do, man? It sounded like great last week." I was like, "Hey, I got it," and it's like, okay, erase that idea. And so it's but I do love the digital world. I think it really helps a lot of musicians, in my spot and around the world, because which is awesome. Dave Grohl and Neil Young, and they're all just like, "You got to go to tape." It's like, that's fine, but that's $250 an hour to go to tape all day long, right? So I have nothing but great plugins in my studio, and everyone's based off analog gear, and now you get tape saturation, and it's all there. I mean, you know the difference, but I think it's getting pretty darn close to a feel like ours. My this Sweet Thunder is done through a Neve console, but in my computer, right? So that gives a big fat warm sound, and so they've really come a long way in digital to make it nice and warm. Because back in my first record, it was very harsh, right? It's just ones and zeros. It's like, "Argh." And now it's quite a neat process. And I use a lot of tube amps. So
that'll get you. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've had a lot of guests on the show, and I mean, we've sat down with Sharif Dumani a couple of times of Exploding Flowers, and he's out in LA, and he's a tape purist.
Yeah,
like he scours the world for replacement parts on tape machines, and he's goes back and back and back, and that's his space, and he has his sound from it. But I think there are a lot of options, and now with plugins, I mean, what matters is how it sounds to you, because then you are taking 100%. That and you're birthing it out and giving it out to the world, and you can't control how they're going to listen to it, whether they're going to listen to it on a record player or they're going to listen to it just by themselves on headphones.
No, well, what I do is interesting enough, back in the day that, the big rock stars used to go to their car and put a cassette in. And if it sounded good in the car, they knew the mix was right. Now it's phones, right? If you play the mix you had and it's coming out of your phone and you're like, oh, I can hear the bass. I can hear it's a good tell that at least everything's going to register in all this new streaming world, where you can lose a lot of bass in the song and you can lose that stuff. But, I would, if everything went to the next, when everything goes up a level, there's no question I'd love to go into a studio for a week and just bang the record out, rehearse, record it, print it, it is the ultimate way to do it, I think, live off the floor into a, console, but, that's fine.
Have you done one like that?
I've done one song like that on, it's called Back Porch Swing. And in my studio in Toronto, and I had the band in one room and I was in another room, and, we just counted in and got the take, actually, which was pretty cool. It's tricky to do unless you have my setup's pretty much more based for tracking, but that's why I'm very adamant on, I'm not going to punch you in. Like, if you can't get through the take, you need to go home and work on your part, and then, come back and we'll, get a good take, because I think that's as close as you can get to feel live off the floor. Sometimes, like Keith Richards says, you don't want to be right on the beat. Sometimes you be ahead, sometimes you be behind, but it leaves that human aspect to the song, which I think is needed.
Yeah. So now we talked about a little bit at the beginning, the Kitchener-Waterloo, which is where you're based out of, right?
Right now, absolutely, yeah.
Like that environment. How does being there in that community influence some of your artistry? Because it is one of those places in Canada, if you've never been, worth checking out, because it's not a Toronto. It's not a...
No, it's an hour outside of Toronto. It's a smaller town, but not a small town, There's been music in Kitchener-Waterloo, because I grew up there, then moved away for a long time, and now we're back. And there's been music here since the beginning, since I can remember. We had Mel Brown, who was in from Florida, a blues guy. We used to get Buddy Guy at Pop the Gator. And just there's been nothing but music here growing up. No different now, there's bands playing everywhere. Every little corner, some guy's got a guitar. They're singing their songs, they're singing covers or whatever, but it happens all over town. What I like about here is, we were in Toronto for 20 years, and you can get a gig there, but, they don't want to give you $5, and here you can make a little money at your show, and you keep honing your craft, right? I mean, you can always have a gig. So Monique and I do a really cool duo, piano and acoustic, that we, go into smaller pubs and, play a lot of songs. Like we're doing a private party tomorrow, Saturday night, and I think it's really great after you write a song to go and play it a bit stripped down even before you start recording it, because you start to feel things and understand it a little more, Yeah. And so it's a great town for music. It really is. And I love Toronto. I go to Toronto. We have great shows in Toronto. But here it's a bit more, there's always a little corner to hone your craft in Kitchener-Waterloo, which is great.
Yeah, no, I've been there a few times, and it's certainly, it has a feel.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's not a Toronto, it's not a New York, it's not an LA. It's much more inviting in a way.
Yeah.
The pace is a little slower, and the people, and look, every Canadian's nice, but the people in that area have, I mean, really, it's very much it's got a bed and breakfast community kind of feel to it.
Yeah, it's a very supportive town too. Like people come out and see it play. You might have the odd night if it rains where there's 10 people, but really you're usually playing to a good bunch of people in this town. So it's really cool. That way for sure.
So you've put out a lot of music over the years, and you've built a fan base. What kind of feedback? Because your lyrics, especially, are they're not on the surface. These are some really great thinking person type of lyrics. Get your thoughts going.
Yeah, thank you.
Some theater of the mind. What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who've listened to your music or seen you perform about the impact that your lyrics and the music make on them?
Well, we get really, really great compliments on the lyrical content of our songs. And the fact that it's, we like to put on a show. So it's not like, okay, we got 12 songs, we're going to play our 12 songs. So like we had a big show in the pilot, and, we did some electric, then we had some acoustic, then I had a solo spot where just alone, and then, building it up and down. But a lot of it is really changed since Monique, and I joined forces on the songwriting, where people started noticing that the words were insightful and, and coming from a spot of caring and just, not, ooh, baby, baby, I love you, to a cool beat, and the other thing I find people like a lot is when you get to go and play the smaller pubs and stuff to keep your chops up. Majority of the places are, playing a lot of covers. So they're like 90% covers, and they'll do maybe one of their own songs. Well, Monique and I, we do 98% original. And we'll throw in, a Wilco or a Jayhawks or a Neil Young song, maybe one or set, So I think people really appreciate that when they come to see us, because they're not just getting the same kind of, guy in the corner singing, not to knock CCR, but CCR or, the old standard covered songs. Because we just, to be honest, at first it was tricky to get a gig when we first moved back, because they're like, well, we like 80% covers, 20 original. I'm like, well, I'm 20/80. Really, I'm 10/90. So, but you get a gig here and then people realize it's a good thing. And so now it's great. So we've just stuck to our guns and we write them. So why won't you play them? That's my thing. I don't need to go and play someone else's songs for 3 hours. I'll play a couple because we love our favorite bands and we like to play their songs and stuff. But we've got I just looked on SoCan. I mean, we've registered about 60 songs now, on SoCan. So we got a lot of material to pull from. So we kind of like to do that over pulling from other musicians. But that's probably our uniqueness around here. It's probably our uniqueness around here for sure.
If I were to get up there and I see you in a pub, I'm gonna make one Jayhawks request though to hear your cover of "Smile." My favorite.
Actually,
Jayhawks
you know what? That was our wedding song, and I know how to play "Smile."
Awesome.
Yeah, and we've just added because 30 years Tomorrow the Green Grass is out, right? So we've added Over My Shoulder to our duo set off of Tomorrow the Green Grass as well. But Smile, I think we learned that about 4 weeks ago. I'm like, I should learn that. Like, it's our wedding song. So now Monique and I play that one at the piano, and we're getting better at it. We're almost there. Like, again, Gary's he sings quite high. So it's, it's a great, great thing. And I love Smile. That was literally our wedding song. One of my favorite albums, actually, by the Jayhawks.
Oh, yeah. No, it got me through a very, very tumultuous period of my life, and it's one that resonates with me really well. So I'll give you ample time to practice if I'm ever going to be up in the area.
Don't worry.
We got about a half a year left. You've had the big release, and if I'm correct, you just got some really big news on an award on a song that you wrote. Tell us about that, and what the rest of the year has in store for you.
So we were rehearsing Tuesday night for our show. We're playing a show tomorrow night, and we couldn't fit our schedule to get down to Nashville. And we're part of the Tennessee Songwriters Association International group that we met when we went down to Nashville. We've been down twice now. And the first time we went down, we had a 4-day blitz where we only have 4 days. The mission is meet some people, get a co-write. The first night we went down, we went to see Broadway, and we went back to the hotel and went, okay, so that's not what we're here for. And not that it wasn't cool, but we're the locals, we're the songwriters, and that's what we're there for. And Monique opens up a magazine, and there's a farmer's market at the Vanderbilt University. So we said, well, let's go there in the morning. So we walk down, and I see this booth of really cool shirts and hats, and it ends up they're called Helen's Pop Art. This is actually the hat here, and we go over there and we start talking to these guys, and Helen and Mark Bronowski, says, "Oh, hey, who are you guys doing?" We're like, "We're songwriters from Canada, here's our card." We're saying, "Oh," he goes, "Yeah, I'm a songwriter too." He starts showing us some of his songs, and because we're Canadian, he goes, "Well, do you know William Shatner?" We're like, "Well, of course, it's Captain Kirk." And he goes, "Yeah, I have 3 songs on William Shatner's country album." I'm like, come on, no way. So that was his tying into us with Canada. And anyway, so we had a nice chat with him. We went off to have a little lunch, and we sat there at the table going, okay, we got to go back there. Something keeps pulling us back to that booth, with Helen's Pop Art. And when we went back, I'm talking to Helen, picking a shirt and a hat, and Monique's off with Mark on the other side. And we go to leave, and Mark goes, "Hopefully I'll see you later." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. Yeah, sure. No problem." And we walk away, and Monique goes, "I can't believe what just happened." I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Mark just invited us to the Tennessee Songwriters Association Awards show this afternoon." And we had tickets for the listening room, go see some music. And we're like, well, those tickets are in the garbage. And we went down to Madison, Tennessee, about 20 minutes outside of Nashville, to a Sam Ash record store or music store, and had a huge room in the back, big stage. And, we walked in, and we met Mark in the parking lot by fluke. He introduced us to everybody. We met Jerry Foster, guy who wrote with Elvis. We wrote this girl, Claire Cunningham, who just done her opera debut, singing a duet with Steve Earle. And we were just in this room of songwriters, like out of nowhere in Nashville. And Mark introduced us to everybody. And we just handed our cards out. And, anyway, so we ended up meeting a lot of really great people that day. And through that, Mark and another songwriter, all these guys are all award-winning songwriters. Like they just write it for breakfast, And we did a write with them last January when we were home over Zoom. We wrote a Christmas song called "Decorating Your Heart" with those two guys, and that just on this last Tuesday night was won an award for Christmas Nostalgia Song of the Year in Nashville, and that was absolutely huge for us, and just super special moment. And those people the people we met in Nashville and the Tennessee Songwriters Association, they're just unbelievable people, giving. I mean, I don't know many people who would just invite two guys technically out of nowhere to an award show like that, and they just opened their hearts and their arms, and and the song on the so that was like crazy. It won Song of the Year for Christmas Nostalgia, and the first song on our record, "Shoebox of Money," we wrote the second time we went down, and we wrote that with Richard Trest, who's another award-winning songwriter that we met that same day. And so after we were at the award show, that's my dog. Anyway, we were at the award show. We're sitting in East Nashville the next day at this crazy beer and donut place. And, we get an email saying, "Hey, y'all, you down for a co-write?" And we're just like, dropped our forks pretty much. It was like, okay, it happened. And we set up a co-write with Richard, and it was our first one. And so now we've written two songs with him. And one with Mark and Corey that just won an award, and couldn't be happier. Like it just was such an amazing feeling to, for something that you wrote to be recognized like that at that level. So it's very cool.
Yeah, that's great news. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier possibly some touring this summer. What's the rest of the year look like for people to catch you either in a local pub or out on the road somewhere?
Yeah, so right now we're just finishing up a string of shows this weekend to release of the record. But you go to our website, henry.taylor.ca. There'll be dates throughout the summer. The plan is to hit Europe, to tour in Europe, and we have a really great guy working for us over in Europe that's gonna, hopefully make that happen. And that's pretty much a big focus right now, and hopefully getting back to Nashville in the fall, and in between, like I said, we're always playing gigs. If you head to the website, you'll see a show somewhere. So absolutely.
Yeah, and we're going to have all that information down in the description below so that everybody can get in touch with your shows, buy your music, all that stuff. So
awesome. Yeah.
I think we'll make sure that I'm sure people will, after listening to this, will hop onto those for sure. A couple things we like to do here at the Hang is kind of spread some good stuff around, right? You never know when you put something out in the universe that you start something and something good happens, and you never know what the chain reaction is. And one of the ways we do that is by asking if you had an opportunity to get in a studio with another musician for a day and create one song, an album, jam, whatever. Who would that musician be and why?
I think right now, but it would be Gary Loris. I'm really, really heavy into his new Dark Country album, his solo record, which I think is just fantastic. And I know he has also produced the Sadies up here in Canada, but I would just, love to get in the studio with Gary Loris and see what could happen. Absolutely.
Well, if anyone's watching and they know Gary, they know anyone in the Jayhawks, this is your opportunity to make something amazing happen. Make Henry's dream come true. Awesome. Well, hey, as I state many times, well, actually, it's every time we do this, Henry can't do this without your support. No musician can do it without your support. Whether you're a casual music fan or you're an obsessed music fan, you know that the industry has changed tremendously. And although streaming platforms are nice to kind of sample a new artist, buying their merchandise, buying the recordings, going to their shows, buying tickets are the best way to support them. And none of them are able to make this really happen with whatever money gets deposited to them by the streaming platforms. So you're going to have those links below. Go out, purchase Henry's albums, purchase a shirt, purchase a hat, whatever you can do to help support his great music career and so that he can keep going. But with that, we also like to share the love of music. And one of the ways we do that is I'm always fascinated, especially since your first listening experience was Rush and Neil Young, which couldn't be on further Canadian spectrums from one another. Exactly. Not only Canadian coast, but also the Canadian musical spectrum. Who are three artists that you're really enjoying that you just jam out to, whether it's to relax to, it's go to the gym, it's take a walk, just kind of listen to and enjoy? Who are three artists that you really like and why? And they could be anybody from, although you don't look like a Swiftie to me, could be, but it could be.
I don't mind Taylor Swift. I'll be honest. There's really nothing wrong with Taylor Swift. She's killing it. So
could be anywhere from her down to another artist that's local that you know that you just really love their music. Who are two or three that you're listening to?
Right now, again, I probably have to go back to Gary Loris is one of them with the new Dark Country album. Canadian wise, I'm a huge fan of Matt Mays. He's a Canadian rock and roller here, and he just puts out fantastic stuff. And he's a big Canadian influence on me. And probably the third biggest thing I'm listening to right now, I think it goes right back to Wilco, and I'm excited, when they come around, and we're going to see Gary Loris at this really small venue at the end of this month here in Toronto. And, Matt Mays though, for me is my favorite Canadian artist without question. Yeah.
Well, there you go, everybody. You've got someone new, Matt Mays. You've got Gary. You've got Wilco. If you've never sampled their music before, to get into them as well, do so. Henry suggests it. And definitely get to know Henry. Hopefully we've done a pretty good job today in our little hang here of kind of getting to know Henry and his music. Please support him. I beg of you, please support Henry. Go see him. Go enjoy what he and his wife are doing. They're great songwriting. Check out him in the band. Congratulate his wife on finally passing the audition. I'm sure she'll appreciate it.
It wasn't too tough. It wasn't too tough. She's pretty good.
But Henry,
pass.
It's been great getting to know you. Thank you to everybody who watches and shares the episodes. Keep coming back. We have so many more great hangs to share. So Henry, it's been great getting to know you, and thanks for joining me today.
Oh, you too, Scott. Thanks for the offer, and really glad we could have this talk. It's amazing.
Absolutely. You know what? You never know. Do another album. We'll hang again.
Hey,
we're always here.
We're already working on the next round of songs. Don't worry. There'll be more.
Excellent. And I look forward to seeing you back here on the hang. Everybody, till the next time, take it easy. Bye-bye for now.
See you.